Okay, welcome to a Sunday morning edition of Superfan Marty Greenberg. We've got no Lions today. We've got no football today. We've got to wait till the Super Bowl, and a lot of Lions fans don't give a shit about Super Bowl now. So we've got Marty Greenberg, a good friend of mine who we often watch the game together, and he's a wealth of knowledge. And I have to say, there are times where he knows more than the announcers and the sportscasters and all that. So, Marty, welcome to Sunday morning.
Morning, Al. Nice to be here.
You got your Lions cap on. So, real quick, let's get out of the way. Your assessment of this season?
I mean, you can look at it two ways. They won 15 games, which is a franchise record, and you got to be happy for that. Certainly, the ride was fun. There were a lot of great times during the season, but unfortunately, when you have such a clunker in your divisional playoff game, it just puts a damper on everything.
Right. And you and I have talked about why there was an inordinate amount of injuries, particularly on defense. And you have a theory on that. Would you want to share that?
I mean, I've heard several people talk about the fact that the Lions probably work harder during the week in practice than most teams. And you just have to wonder, how much can a body take, the toll it takes on joints and muscles and ligaments, and such an inordinate amount of injuries. It just makes you wonder whether they're overdoing it a little.
And the NFL is not only that. I mean, it's such a grueling season. I mean, it's a brutal sport. And they're talking about actually adding another game to the season. What do you think about that?
I mean, it's money. The whole thing. Listen, it wasn't too long ago. Well, it was long ago when back in the 50s and 60s, it was a 12-game schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're talking it's probably going to go to 18, a 50% increase in games.
That's crazy.
It's just about money. And the thing is, the NFL Players Union, who is there to supposedly protect the players, they're all for it.
Yeah.
They just want more money for the players.
Yeah. So the players obviously get more money if they're playing more games.
Yeah. They'll probably live 10 years shorter too.
Yeah. So, okay, let's go to the coaching now. We've lost, we've lost the two top coaches, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn. I guess one of the questions is, when we play Chicago, are we going to kick ourselves when they do a trick play and they pull it off against us, or what?
I mean, the thing you have to realize is the Lions were set up to do a lot of these trick plays. When you do trick plays, typically you need a lot more time to establish these plays, to get set up. You're throwing the ball around in the backfield. Receivers have to do some wild things downfield. You need an extra couple seconds. Yeah. The Lions have and had a very good offensive line. Chicago doesn't. So until they get an established line, it's going to be much tougher.
They're not.
I would think, to do those plays.
And now let's go through quarterback Jared Goff. What do you see for next season?
I mean, he's a very good quarterback. You could see just watching the Pro Bowl games that were going on these past couple days.
Right.
You could see when he's not under pressure, physical pressure, how well he can throw the ball.
Right.
I mean, he's really a great passer.
Right.
In today's league, though, is turning into more of a mobile quarterback league. Mm-hmm. And eventually, I think the Lions will either draft a young quarterback or somehow get a more mobile quarterback. But for the next 3 or 4 years, in a positive sense, they're stuck with Goff.
Uh-huh.
And as long as you give him the necessary protection and weapons, I think they can win with him.
And do you see him as being in the same league as Josh Allen and some of the other quarterbacks? Or is he kind of second tier?
Yeah, I would say he's a step below Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, those type of guys, Patrick Mahomes. The thing is, though, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, they haven't won anything.
Right.
I mean, it's really only been Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
So as great and dynamic as those players are,
Uh-huh.
They still have the Super Bowl.
Yeah. And do you see the loss of the coaches? They've lost quite a few coaches now since they've been out of the playoffs. Is what impact does it have? It sounds like they've gotten some good replacements. John Morton, Kevin Shepard for defense, John Morton for offense. Which are they going to miss a beat, you think, or
I think the one advantage, usually when you do Philadelphia went through that last year. 3 years ago, they were in the Super Bowl. Then they lost their offensive and defensive coordinator. And if you remember last year, they started off like 11-1, and then they lost like 6 in a row or so.
Right.
When you get different coordinators that are planning on running the game differently, it's tough on an offense. A lot of times you have different terminology. It's like a whole new language players have to learn. But hold on, I'm sorry. When you bring in guys like the Lions have Kelvin Shepard, John Morton, they were under the tutelage of the two guys they lost. Kelvin Shepard worked under Aaron Glenn. He'll probably use the same terminology and have the same basic schemes. And with John Morton, he actually was with the Lions back in 2022, and he was a big help in getting Jared Goff back on track.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So he worked with Ben Johnson, and he had a lot of input into the season.
Okay.
So that being said, I don't think there's going to be too much of a difference.
Okay.
Too much of a thing for the players to.
Too big of a disruption there.
Exactly.
So what happens in the draft? I mean, do they just keep loading up on defensive players, knowing that there's probably going to be a loss of some during the season, or what's?
Well, you never know with Brad Holmes. I was reading an article the other day. They said everyone thinks the Lions should take a young man named Mike Green from Marshall University, who is a great edge rusher. But the writer of the article said usually when everyone wants Brad Holmes to do something, he doesn't do it. Well, who knows? He shocked everyone a couple of years ago when we already had a very good offense. And he went ahead and took Jahmyr Gibbs, and people were going wild. What do you need another guy in offense for, And you don't draft a running back that high. But he proved to be right. You never know with Brad Holmes. They're going to do what they want to do.
And Jahmyr Gibbs, who are some of the other players that he drafted and then the fans gave him grief about, and now they're like, whoa. Well,
in that particular draft, you drafted Jahmyr Gibbs. Then you drafted Sam Laporta, a tight end. Typically, you don't move up to get a tight end or let alone a running back like Gibbs. Actually, before Laporta, it was Gibbs, and then they moved up to get Jack Campbell. He's called an off-the-ball linebacker. You just never move up to get an off-the-ball linebacker. And they did. People are going wild that they did that, and then they took a tight end. So you took 3 different positions where people said you just don't do that.
And Jack Campbell's turned out to be a great addition to.
All those 3 guys have been great.
And so what do you see the biggest need for in this draft?
Well, certainly they need help rushing the passer.
Yeah,
they have the option to, get it through free agency, possibly through trade. Everyone here in Detroit, our dream is to get Max Crosby.
Who was said he was saying that he's bummed that the Lions are good now. That he waited all his life. He wanted to play for the Lions, and now they're good. Is there a chance that Max? What's the status of Max Crosby?
The Raiders have said they are not trading him, but who knows? Certainly the Lions have enough. They're talented enough right now where the Rams had a saying when Brad Holmes worked for the Rams. His boss was Les Snead, their general manager, and his famous quote is, F the draft choices.
Yeah.
And basically saying we're good enough right now. We're going to bring in players we can win with right now. And he was proven right. They brought in several players. I can't think of some of them who they brought in. Von Miller they brought in.
Mm-hmm.
One, I forget the name of the Bears linebacker they brought in as well. But anyway, they went for it, and they won their Super Bowl. And he says, we are good enough drafting where even though we're going to lose top draft choices and trade those away, further down the draft, we're good enough to find good players in the third, fourth, fifth rounds.
Oh, wow.
So maybe Brad Holmes will take that philosophy too.
And is it a blessing in disguise that the Lions lost and that Aiden Hutchinson didn't have to test whether he was prepared to come back for the Super Bowl? You get the feeling he was going to come back, insist on coming back if he was anywhere close to it, and possibly a dangerous move. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, even when he comes back next year, who knows if he's going to be what he was, such a severe injury.
Yeah.
So I think it was kind of a pipe dream that he was going to come back to the Super Bowl. Even if he did, I mean, I don't think he could have been very effective.
Right. And how about Alex Anzalone? Where do you see him in the future of the Lions?
I mean, I think he's got 2 more years on his contract. He's certainly been a huge part of that defense. He's the quarterback of that defense, and without him, you saw they were pretty scattered on defense.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Phone calls here.
Drop something here.
Yep. So, anyways, and so we've also talked about the Lions have a ridiculously tough schedule. Tell a little bit about next year's schedule.
I mean, when you come in first place, you pay a penalty, so to speak. The NFL wants parity. Ideally, they like every team to be as close to 500 as possible, other than the Chiefs, who they cheat for.
Yeah. And so who do they have on their schedule?
So just off the top of my head, they have but not only are they playing these teams, they're going to be on the road against these teams. At Baltimore, tremendously tough game. They got blown out there 2 years ago, as you remember.
Right.
They have at Philadelphia, who's in the Super Bowl. They have at Kansas City, who's in the Super Bowl this year. Right. They have, of course, at Minnesota, at Green Bay. They have at Washington, who was one of the Final Four. It's a ridiculously tough schedule. I mean, I think they have 9 road games this year. It alternates 8 or 9 games each year. I mean, if they go 4-5 on the road versus 8-0 this year, I think you'd almost sign up for that right now.
And what do you make of our division? I mean, we expected this past season the Packers to be better than they ended up being. I think the Vikings ended up being better than we anticipated. What do you anticipate for next year in our division?
I mean, Minnesota has a huge problem on their hands with what to do with Sam Darnold. There's teams that they need quarterbacks. And Sam Darnold, although he kind of fell apart at the end of the year, he's a guy who showed he can win 14 games in this league.
Right.
And the Vikings, I don't think with J.J. McCarthy in the wings, I don't think they want a long-term contract. Right. They can franchise tag him this year, and he'd be making somewhere in the low $40 million range.
Right.
But that's just a 1-year deal, and he's a free agent. So I believe he does not have to go with their franchise tag.
All right, here's some same-day parlay. Says, I'm still hurting, and it's too early to comment on my Lions. Is it? Do you feel a sadness about the season, or do you feel like, okay, we did as well as we could do under the?
No, I mean the season ended with a thud, right? It's like everything was building up. The problem, I think, next year is a problem that a lot of winning organizations, a fan base has. It's kind of like what the Red Wings went through when they made the Stanley Cup playoffs 25 straight years. Right. It's like, get me through the regular season, right?
Playoffs.
Yeah.
And so Yeah, so I guess I know Mitch Albom wrote a column and he talked about you know anticipation that next year will be even better, and then he points to San Francisco had a horrible season
Right.
this year. Uh, what do you see the possibility? I mean, they have such a tough schedule. Could they end up having kind of a mediocre record, or how do
I
you?
mean, they're really a talented team. I can't. It would be tough for me to foresee them not making the playoffs, but you never know. We see what injuries can do to a team. God forbid you lose your quarterback. Those are all things that can happen and do happen.
What happened? What do you see the quarterback situation for Detroit besides Goff?
I mean, they're talking about cutting Hendon Hooker.
Uh-huh. What do you think about that?
The problem with Hendon Hooker more than anything is he's old. He's almost as old as Jared Goff. He's 2 years younger.
Yeah.
He's going to be 27 years old already and has never really done, he's, I think, had 9 or 10 plays from scrimmage in real games.
Uh-huh.
The Lions have on their squad Jake Fromm, former Georgia national championship quarterback. Yeah, I know in the exhibition season, for whatever it's worth, he looked great. Yeah. But I think he's a guy that has some skills. But they might draft someone too in this draft.
Yeah. It says here Dan Campbell learned his lesson and will try less fourth down conversions. What do you think? Do you think he's
I think it's total. I don't agree at all with that. In fact, if anything, the NFL is becoming a 4-down league. Unless you're 4th and 12 from your own 15, right. These teams are going for it.
And do you think Dan Campbell has changed the league?
I really do. Don't you?
Yeah. I mean, the Commanders they play the same way now,
and it's tough to play against.
Yeah, right. It gives an extra down. Usually, it's like you breathe. As a fan, you watch 3rd and 8, and you're like, okay, if we can just hold them,
right.
So then it's 3rd and 4 or 4th and 4, and they're going for it,
right. And
it just raises the anxiety level.
Right.
But it makes for a more exciting game. What about the kicking? What do you see? We're seeing longer and longer field goals.
Yeah, there's been talk about maybe moving the goalpost narrower, which would make it more interesting. I think they should. I mean, really. Let's say you just get a touchback on a kickoff, you're at the 30-yard line.
Right.
The way these guys are now, if you just get to the other team's 45, which is only 25 yards, you're in field goal range, a 62-yarder.
Right.
Which these guys can make now.
And what's different that these guys are suddenly making these 55, 60-yard field goals? What's different? Are they just better kickers, or is something?
I mean, obviously, I don't know if it's technique, training methods, or what, but these guys are getting close to hitting it from 65, 70 yards out on a regular basis.
Right. Well, maybe we'll see Peyton Manning kick a.
Right.
There you go. So optimistic about next year for the Lions?
Of course, let's see what they do in free agency. Let's see what they do with the draft. But they certainly have a tremendous talent base. They might be the most talented team in the NFL.
Right.
But
when you talk about, we see what the free agency about. I mean, we already have, Montgomery, Gibbs.
You need very few things, right?
St. Brown, Porta. I mean, what do you see about Patrick? Patrick had a pretty good season for the Lions.
Yeah, I think he had 33 catches. He's good, but he's a free agent now. He might want to go elsewhere. He's not young. He's been injury prone. I look for them possibly to draft a receiver.
Yeah.
Or sign a free agent receiver.
And do you see a possibility of them going after another quarterback just as a backup?
It's possible. It's possible. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so Aiden Hutchinson, if he's healthy, is in good shape. And what about Smith?
He has 1 year left on his contract. I know he wants to come back. But he was average. He was an average performer.
Right. Little disappointing. He made some plays, but he was not really a big change maker for the team.
Right.
They need somebody who can help Aiden Hutchinson.
Right.
And then let's go briefly before we wrap this up. Let's go to the Tigers. What do you foresee for the Tigers this year?
Well, we're only 2 weeks away from pitchers and catchers reporting. They made a couple small signings. They got the reliever from the Yankees. He's very good. They signed Alex Cobb from the Indians, who's been around forever, doesn't throw very hard. They really, I don't know whether it's Javi Baez, PSD.
What happens?
Or PTS.
Yeah, what happens to Baez? How many years does he have left on his contract?
PTSD, by the way. Didn't have the initials, right?
What do you see?
I think he has. I think he might have 3 years left.
Wow.
I think it was a 6-year contract.
He's been one of the biggest disappointments. I mean, usually we see some of these big contracts near the end of their career. They're kind of mediocre at best. Like even Cabrera and some of the other Martinez.
Yeah, Baez decided to do it right from the beginning.
Right from the start. So you weren't going to be disappointed and say, "What's happening to this guy?"
Right.
What do you think? At some point, they might just. It seems like he's never going to get to where he needs to go. Do you think they'll just eat the contract at some point?
I mean, they should. They're not getting anything out of him. The only thing I would say is they probably will just play him against left-handed pitchers. So maybe he can do a little better, but it seems like he's just not very good anymore.
Yeah, it seems like he can. And then Torkelson.
I think they've pretty much given up on. He's going to have to make the team having a great spring training, but they pretty much, from what I understand, have told him, "You're not in our plans."
Yeah. And you were saying he just can't hit major league fastball. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, if you can't hit a fastball, you can't play in the big leagues.
Yeah, crazy. So, do you expect? Potentially a playoff team this year for the Tigers?
I mean, it depends. I'm still waiting to see if they do anything with Alex Bregman. Certainly, that would help offensively, but I'm getting less and less hopeful on that.
Yeah.
They were talking about Jack Flaherty possibly coming back, but I was reading this morning that he might be signing with the Angels,
right?
Which I know he's a California kid, so he probably would like to stay out there.
Right.
It's hard to say. I don't foresee them being able to do over an entire season what they did over the last 50, 60 games.
Right.
Having one or 1.5 starting pitchers.
Right. And just to go back to the Lions, any prediction on a record for next year? What do you anticipate?
I mean, let's go what I said. If they go hopefully 4-5 on the road, and then they have 8 home games, say they go 6-2, 10-7, 11-6, which is fine. I think now just get into playoffs.
Right.
They're not going to be the number 1 seed. I would be stunned if they're a number 1 seed.
And the expectations are maybe the fans are a little bit more tempered, you think, or are they like, yes, this is the year? I
mean, certainly they have the talent. I think just realistically looking at their brutal schedule, I don't see how they can approach that record.
Yeah. All right. Well, Marty, thanks a lot. We're going to have you back again. I always appreciate talking sports with you. You always have a lot of insights, and thanks for all the viewers here. Appreciate it. So everybody have a good Sunday. And next week's Super Bowl, I guess, who gives a shit? Who are you going to root for?
I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I don't know until the TV's on.
So,
but I don't think it'll be Kansas City.
I think the sad part is I think Detroit fans this time were thinking, yes, finally I'm going to have a Super Bowl where I'm going to have true passion for a team. And now we're all like, KC, Philly.
Right. We've seen this before.
Yeah, we've seen it before. Hopefully it'll be a good game, but nonetheless.
Who do you like in that game?
I somehow, for some reason, leaning a little bit toward Kansas City, but when the game starts, who knows? Sometimes you're rooting for one team, and then suddenly you find yourself rooting for the other,
right?
By second set of downs or something. So,
right.
I guess we shall see. So, anyways, thanks again. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you soon.